Satellites affect our lives in many ways every day, providing navigation positioning to providing TV and internet connectivity. My name is Garrett, and today we will be talking about satellite communications, so make sure to stay tuned. A satellite is any object in orbit, but today we're only going to talk about man-made satellites, specifically communication satellites. These satellites are meant to move data of different types to customers and people who need it. The way an orbit works is by making an object fall with such a velocity that it consistently misses the Earth. Communication satellites generally use geostationary orbits to send data back to Earth over a specific area. To get a satellite to space, you would need a lot of delta V, a measure of the velocity of the rocket. In the past, the US would launch satellites on board a Saturn V rocket or even the shuttle. The emergence of private space companies like SpaceX and Rocket Labs who launch satellites for lower costs than the US. SpaceX continues to lead the private spaceflight industry due to their lower cost of launches. This is due to their first stage reusability. To send data, a ground station sends data on the uplink frequency to the satellite. The satellite then uses a transponder to change the frequency, remove static, and amplify the power. Data is then rebroadcasted by the dish or horn system, and the adjusted frequency is picked up by the receiver and decoded. The most simple devices that use satellite communications are GPSs, which your smartphone has. A satellite phone is another very simple satellite communication device. The most common use for communication satellites is television. The main two providers in the United States are Dish Network and DirecTV. The ground station receives the lineup in a local city and broadcasts it through their big dish to a satellite in orbit before being broadcast to the local area. The second use is for internet transmission. There are several different companies, but for this example, I'll talk about HughesNet and Starlink. HughesNet was one of the average choices for satellite internet prior to 2021. With the introduction of Starlink, more people began to see satellite internet as an option. Why? The services like HughesNet operate their satellites at an orbit of about 22,236 miles above Earth, giving people a very high latency of 600 to 1200 milliseconds and a download speed of at best 3 megabytes per second. This means the internet is so slow that you can hardly download anything nowadays, and a web page takes forever to respond. Starlink fixed the issue by putting their satellites in orbit 340 miles above the Earth. This gave them a low latency of 20 to 40 milliseconds with a download speed of about 30 to 40 megabytes per second. This is fast enough that you can play an online game with a decent connection. The third type is radio broadcast. The one major player in this area is SiriusXM, a merger between Sirius and XM radio. They broadcast their signal from their stations to their satellites, which then come back down to your car so you can receive music uninterrupted across the country. Satellites have progressed a long ways, from Sputnik being a ball with antennas to being absolutely vital for civilization nowadays. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until I upload again, this is Garrett.